Please welcome David Jaffe, President and Chief Executive Officer, Ascena Retail Group, Inc., with Gene Mannheim, Managing Director, Herbert Mines Associates.
Good afternoon. My guest today is David Jaffe. He's the CEO and President of Ascena Retail Group. Many of you may know this story, but it bears repeating. His mother and father opened a store in 1962 in Stamford, Connecticut called Dress Barn. And today, that store has grown into a $7.5 billion, 5,000 store chain with 70,000 associates?
70,000 associates.
And is a 6-brand. Eight. Oh, because you're counting Ann Taylor's.
Right.
Depending on who's counting, 8-brand retail publicly traded company. David, thanks for coming. David rushed over here from a luncheon that actually provides grants to social entrepreneurs throughout the country. It's the second year that the grants have been provided, named after his mom, the Rosalind S. Jaffe Awards. And he had 700 people there today at Cipriani, and it was very successful.
Thank you.
Thanks for rushing over here to do this.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
The Ascena family of brands has been extremely busy lately. And the news seems like every other day there's an article. I think you're starting to annoy Trump. You're buying Ann Inc. There's a CEO transition at Ann Inc. There's this Plus is Equal campaign at Lane Bryant. Golden Gate made an investment in your company. I know you're not a publicity seeker, but how do you feel about that?
Well, I guess what some of the PR people say, anything you say, just spell my name right. Good PR is priceless, and fortunately we've been able to get mostly good PR because I think what we're doing resonates with the hedge funds because of our business strategy. On the charitable side, the Mrs. J Awards. On our customer side, the I'm No Angel Plus is Equal campaigns are resonating with our customers. So we're pretty proud of those, and the PR that comes from that, I think, supports what we're driving after.
And one of my colleagues actually sent me a picture this morning outside of Penn Station. You've got a billboard for, I'm sure it's elsewhere, Dress Barn.
Yeah.
Like, that's our name, deal with it.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
How did that come? I mean, how did you decide? Was that an issue? Should we change our brand?
Well, there are always people that say, "Oh, I wouldn't shop in a barn," and it's kind of a cute story. Mrs. J needed to come up with a name. This is back in 1962 because the store was going to open and they needed a sign. So she wanted something that would evoke women, and suits, shirts, jeans, or unisex. So dress. And then she wanted something, remember this is 62, that would evoke low cost, bare bones. And in Connecticut anyway, barns have that image. Pottery Barn has a nice image. So she went with Dress Barn, and it was been very successful. But in some of the new markets, has been now when we do the surveys, people are kind of over it. But there's always a few people that you want to maybe get over that hump and create some trial.
Let's talk about the growth strategy for a second. You mentioned, I'm sure you get calls all the time and presentations all the time, but are the acquisitions that you've made and whatever plans you may have for the future, is it an opportunistic strategy? Things come your way, you check them out? Is it more of there's an investment thesis that you're pursuing?
The first thing I do, I like to consider myself a student of retail. I've been around this business for 30 years. And I'm always walking malls, I'm always reading articles, trying to understand, what's the next new thing or what business do we think really has great equity in its brand. So I've got like a little hit list, my little, top 10 companies I'd love to someday be able to acquire.
Can we put that list up on?
Yeah, right. So sometimes they become, quote, actionable That is, they're looking to sell. Maybe it's private equity backed, and they're looking to get out. Sometimes they're going through transition, or they're going through some hard times. And we've kind of dealt with all of those situations with the 4 acquisitions that we've done, and fortunately they've worked out pretty well. But the key is that we're being thoughtful. These are companies that we want to buy, not companies that just kind of land on our lap with a blue book. So the way I like to think about it is that we're buying brands, not stores. So there are a lot of companies out there, many of which in the last 10 years have gone bankrupt, that were just a bunch of stores. So as part of our due diligence, one of the first things we do is we do interviews, we do focus groups, we do online surveys, we do research to understand whether or not that chain is a bunch of stores or truly has brand equity that resonates with the consumer. And that equity is what we're buying.
So all of the businesses you've bought lately have been businesses on your list of businesses you'd consider. Are you open to the possibility that someone might come to you with an opportunity that's not on that list of 10, or do you stick to it?
Always keep an open mind. Right now, we don't have much of an open to buy. We just closed the Ann Inc. transaction a couple months ago, and we're going to be focused on really creating the value there, driving the synergies, creating the collaboration with a lot of their team and our team. It was a process we call creating best practices so that we can learn from each other and make both businesses, all 8 of our brands, stronger businesses from that sharing of information and techniques and knowledge.
Speaking of sharing, you've created a shared services group. Can you explain that to us and
Sure.
tell us how that benefits the
So Ascena is a holding company, and we've got all the brands that kind of are owned by Ascena. And we also have something called our shared services group. And what that does is provide all the back-end operational services for all the brands. So by centralizing our logistics, our transportation, our supply chain, maybe it's our accounting, our tax, our legal, non-merch procurement, I can go on and on. We've got about 22 functions that we've centralized, and this way we get the advantage of our size, and we can leverage that for lower costs and greater efficiency, and we can drive those savings back to the brands, which creates higher operating margins, and at the same time, it makes the brands, enables them to focus on their customer. They don't have to worry about all the back-end stuff because that's being taken care of by the shared services group, so the executive team and everyone can just focus on driving sales and creating interactions and connections with their customer.
How much influence do you have over the brands when the CEOs or division presidents report to you?
Right.
I know you try to leave them to their own devices, but how do you walk that line?
It's I use the word collaborative a lot. So I speak to all the brand presidents every week. I bring them all together once a week for an Ascena leadership meeting to stay connected, to talk about big issues. What's happening in China? How's that going to impact our business? What should we do in response to what we're seeing there? And then on an individual basis, we'll talk about things that they're going through. It could be marketing strategies, it could be personnel issues, it could be sourcing challenges. But they really have the final say. They're the CEO of their business. So at some point, if they keep making decisions that don't work out and that I don't agree with, maybe it's a career decision, but really I want to give them not just the responsibility, but also the accountability for their decisions.
So talking about talent, when you're considering the purchase of a company, how do you go about assessing the senior team, and could the quality of the team be a make or break factor in whether you would go forward and close?
So for the most part, when we have bought our businesses, we are leaving existing management in place. Occasionally there's 1 or 2 people that we swap out. Someone's ready to leave the business, or we have someone kind of on the bench or at one of our other brands that's ready for this opportunity. And as we think about the due diligence process, you're going to spend a lot of your time focusing on the business in terms of the brand equity, as I said earlier. But the other part is the people. So it's a small retail world. Kind of everybody is 1 degree of separation away from everyone else. So we're able to kind of do our due diligence on the team and understand the strength of the team. As an example, with the Ann situation, we have something like 5 VP and above executives from Ann that are working in other divisions. So it's a very small world, and that's what's made it very easy and comfortable to merge with these businesses, because there is so much connection in the women's specialty apparel industry.
What about culture? Ascena seems to, my exposure to Ascena is that there's a very distinct culture and philosophy about how to operate in a business like fashion, but you're buying companies that have never been affiliated with you before. How do you pass those important cultural tenets onto the company without them thinking you're micromanaging their culture?
So first, part of the due diligence is also making sure that the culture is compatible. Doesn't mean it's the same one. And we don't move the businesses. So if some of you may know Maurice's, they were started in Duluth, Minnesota, and they're still in Duluth. So we never moved them, because that's where 95% of the people are from. So if you move the business to be in a campus setting, you would lose all of those people, and that's really where that tribal knowledge exists. And I think it would be a huge problem if you did that. So we've left all of our businesses exactly where they were, the teams mostly in place. And as we think about the culture, we want them, each brand, to have their own culture. And the analogy I like to use is, if you're from Texas, you've got the Longhorns, and you got the bumper sticker, and you got all that going on, and you're really proud of Texas, but you also have an American flag. So you're proud of your state, but you're also proud of being part of something bigger than just your state. And that's what we try and do at Ascena. We want each brand to really own their culture, but we want them also to feel proud of being part of Ascena, and that's why events like today's Mrs. J Awards helps propagate those values and that culture.
The companies you own are fairly traditional companies that you're trying to have be as current and cutting edge as possible. There have been articles written lately about merchandising and the function of merchandising starting to morph maybe a little from the creativity and trend spotting to being influenced by data, big data, all this information coming in on consumer buying behavior. The Wall Street Journal recently said that some people think that merchant intuition is going to be replaced, at least to some degree, by data-based algorithms telling them what shoppers want. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think it all starts with the merchant's creativity, and then technology can help support that and can give you faster answers or more greater sense confirmation of what's working. So we believe in the merchant. We believe in the creativity and the artistry of a great merchant, and we believe in technology. So we think that technology can be used whether it's in the store setting, and I saw Alexi here from Retail Next. I don't know if he's been up already, but what Retail Next is doing is just amazing, and I hope he gets a chance to tell his story later. And as we think about the availability of information in today's day, technology, it gives you an edge that you didn't have before. And then when you put that together, and I think Niels just said this a minute ago, the fact that about 80% of our customers shop online before they come into the store, you're able to capture this woman in multi-dimensions. And our challenge as retailers is to pull that together. Neil calls it convergence, where we've got this great experience online, we've got this wonderful experience in the stores, and we make it seamless. So she can order online, deliver to the store. She's in the store, we don't have her size, she can order it in the store and deliver it to her home, or vice versa. And that flexibility, that seamless commerce I think is going to be what's going to take retail forward. And the guys that are investing in it, whether it's from the online side, like Warby Parker, or from the brick and mortar side, like Ascena, I think we're all going to end up in a similar place where you've got to have one view of that customer, because she's going to shop wherever and whenever she wants to shop, and you've got to make it easy for her.
How far, under the heading of the shared services topic, how far do you think you can push shared services in terms of the functions that you could migrate there before you jump the shark, so to speak, and have too many things centralized and you lose that local focus?
So generally what we say is anything that faces the customer remains at the brand. So if you think merchandising, marketing, store operations, that's all at the brand. Anything that the customer doesn't care about, things I rattled off earlier, you want to centralize those things because of the cost savings available. So some of you may be aware of the Ann acquisition. We have come out and said that we expect to get $150 million of synergies from that transaction. So that's the return on investment. If we can get that $150 million, and we're highly confident we can, it's all from these shared services opportunities. We envision our infrastructure to being this plug-and-play capability. So it's now built out in many, many regards, and now we have the capability, but in some cases we don't have the capacity. So we'll be building the capacity and then just be able to plug in Ann and maybe sometime down the road in the future, some other brand into this infrastructure.
So Primark just arrived on our shores, and everybody's talking about that in sort of the context of fast fashion, cheaper, stylish apparel. There was an article which I warned you I was going to quote. Cowen and Company recently stated that they view Primark as a new threat to retailers, and specifically named Macy's, Kohl's, L Brands, and Ascena among those threatened. So how do you feel about the Primark arrival?
I think they're terrific retailers, and if you haven't seen one, I think they're opening up in Philly next week or soon, and the Boston store is amazing. And I think the guys that are going to be more impacted are the guys that already have low prices, like a Walmart, that are similar to low prices, but don't have the fashion quotient that Primark has. And the other side are the guys that have high fashion, like a Forever 21 and H&M, but whose prices are higher than Primark's. Our quality at all of our brands is of a different nature than Primark. So certainly women are going to cross-shop, but I'm not particularly concerned that our customer is going to take all of her dollars and go from one of our brands into Primark. I think they're a great retailer, and there's definitely a need or an opportunity for guys like that. And I think they're going to impact a lot of different retailers, not just the few that you mentioned.
So we're getting a warning. I'm going to combine two questions
Okay.
into one. With regard to CEO transition, our company does a study every year. We look back 7 years, and a disproportionate relative to other industries number of CEOs in a transition setting come from outside the company, which means that succession planning is not always happening within those companies. You've got these brands, and each of them has a leader. So the questions are, number one, do you view those brand leaders as sort of they're testing, even though you're a very young man, to possibly be the CEO of Ascena? And number two, the whole idea of the CEO of a major retailer no longer needing to be a merchant, prince or princess,
Right.
that there are many other functions that a retail CEO can now have come up through.
So certainly, all the brand presidents are being developed, whether to take my place or maybe to move to another brand. And below them, same thing. We're developing our talent. As much as I love you, Gene, I don't want to pay anymore. So we want to be able to move talent, develop talent, and move them within our 8 brands. So if we bring someone up and they're an up-and-comer, but they're body blocked, and then when maybe one of our smaller brands has an opening, we would move them over there and continue their development. So for the second part of your question, I think the CEO of the future is not going to have just one background. You can't just be a merchant. You can't just be a marketing person or just a financial person. I think the most successful, or brick and mortar versus an online, I think the most successful CEOs are going to be people that have kind of moved around in their career and have this intellectual curiosity that they want to see what's next, and they're open to testing things, and they're curious about how retail is going to continue to evolve, because what we've seen in the last 10 years in terms of the change of the retail market far surpassed anything for the 50 years before it, and I think the next 10 years will be that much change again.
And do you think that that's a unique perspective that you have, that because you're more of a businessman CEO, you were never, you know, have a long history of being a retail operator or merchant, and so you have a more open-minded view of it?
Perhaps, but as we develop our people internally, we're trying to expose them to all these things, because if they walk in and they don't have the vocabulary to go across all these different functions, all these different issues, they're not going to be successful. And I think if someone believes that they're going to be successful just being on a single track their whole career, that they can make it into the C-suite, I think they may be kidding themselves.
Thank you. We have time for questions, if anybody has any.
Thank you. Do you have a program where you actively move executives around into other disciplines where they haven't been before?
So it's not active yet. It's not something that we're doing as organized as we'd like to, but certainly we're exposing people and we're trying to develop an approach that not only develops people from maybe a high performer to a higher level in the organization, but also moves them around to other brands and other functions. But frankly, we're not there yet, but that's kind of the vision. Thanks.
I've got a question from the iPads. What strategies did you employ to adjust the historical discounting strategy?
If we're thinking about product discounting, many of our brands are still promotional, and the challenge is to kind of dial back the promotions. Things got a little crazy there after the recession, and so what we've been working with each of our brands is to test different promotions, but dialed back. The biggest example some of you may be aware of is at Justice. Up until this past back-to-school season, for the last few years, everything was 40 off, or 40 plus 20 flash sale, or 50 off, and it just got crazy. So now we've taken a very different approach, where half of our product is what we call style buys, and that's everyday low price. We don't promote it. It's a great price right out of the box, very competitive with anyone else's final promoted price. And then we have our more fashionable product, which is a little higher price point, and selectively we can promote that, but at a much lower level than we would have the year before.
David, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Maurice's will not be open on Thanksgiving this year. Does that go against the retail trend, and what was your thinking in that? And maybe you can give us some sense of the holiday season, what your outlook is.
Okay, well, on the first one, we actually just had on our ALT call, our leadership call on Monday, we talked about that. And it's back to our values. So wherever we are not bound by a lease to open, and many of the outlet centers, maybe many of the bigger malls, there is a requirement that if the anchor is open, you have to open, then we'll open. But if not, we're not opening. And we're sending a big message out to our associates that, this is family time. Some of you may have seen this morning, REI said they're not going to open on Friday. Now that was a little bit extreme. I don't think we would do that, but certainly on Thursday, wherever we can, across all of our brands, we're trying to stay closed and let everybody enjoy Thanksgiving, family values, et cetera, and then come back to work fired up for a big Black Friday. In terms of the holiday, we're all hopeful. At this point, I don't know which survey to believe. I think the tenor of the industry feels a little bit better. Certainly this last month, as the weather got cooler, it felt like the customer was coming back in the store and a little more interested in shopping. And as we see some of the new fashions, at least at our brands, come in, and there's been good reaction, we're very positively inclined to at least a solid holiday season.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.